Hey, good day, everyone. This is Michael Colbeck, your Truth Activator, coming to you for Rise Again. And I want to talk to you a little bit about seeds, the power of a seed. I want you to take a moment. I want you to picture a seed. We all know what seeds look like. Pick any seed that you want. Notice how small that seed is. And then think about what that seed is intended to become. You see, here is the beautiful thing about seeds and about becoming. A seed already has within it everything that it needs to become what it is destined to become. But there's a slight catch. Because the seed can only become what it is destined to become if it has the right environment. Right? Anybody who's done anything with planting of flowers, planting of any kinds of plants, of trees, of whatever it is, knows this to be true. You can keep a seed and throw it in a junk drawer in your kitchen, and it'll remain good and viable for years. Heck, I have some seeds of my own, some heirloom seeds that are packed appropriately, and they're in my freezer. They will remain for years and years. And even that seed in your junk drawer, it'll remain viable for years. And what happens when you take that seed out? You realize you're going through the junk drawer someday and you realize, oh, this is not supposed to be here. I wonder what this is. And you decide to plant it. And so you plant that seed. You put that seed in the proper environment. You give it the soil, the water, the sunlight it needs. And what happens? It automatically becomes that which it was destined to become. The only thing it truly needed was the right environment. It already had within it everything it needs to reach its fullest potential. And maybe it grows into this mighty oak tree. Maybe it grows into one of those redwoods in California, which I still have on my bucket list to see. All it needed was the right environment. This is a message of encouragement, because for years and years, decades even, I knew what I was supposed to become. I knew who I wanted to be. I knew what I felt in here, internally, and I could not get it to execute. I just couldn't get it to flourish, to blossom. Turns out, I wasn't in the correct environment. I was in an environment where the seed was stagnant. So desperately wanting to become that which I knew I was called to be, and yet not knowing how. And not knowing that the environment that I was in was not conducive at all to me becoming who I was supposed to be. to becoming who I was destined to be. And in my particular case, I had to change my environment. Now, it's true that the environment I was in, the outward, external environment that I was in, was simply a reflection of things going on within me. There's a reason I was in those types of relationships, because there were things in my internal environment that were off. There were things in my internal environment that made those places, those people, feel like home, at least for a while. Long enough to get me in and say, this is a good place for me. This is a wonderful place for me to grow. Now, make no mistake. Even though I was in the wrong environment, in an incorrect environment, I grew. But the growth was painful. And it came at a massive, massive cost. Costs which years later I am still uncovering and actually still impact my life on a daily basis. And yet, once I woke up to the reality, to facing the truth of certain things that I could no longer deny, and started taking care of me, the natural thing that occurred was for me to create a new environment. See, I was working because I realized that the things that were showing up in my life, it was not always about the other person. It didn't mean that person was just always 100% of the time wrong and incorrect and terrible and everything else. So many of us like to claim that. But the fact is, especially in these relationships, it takes two to tango. They bring something, you bring something. And I was looking at what I was bringing. I was looking at the way I was showing up. I was looking at the belief systems internally. All of them, which I've talked about in other videos, are other-oriented, were other-oriented, to the exclusion of self, where self didn't register at all. And if self doesn't register at all, there's no good soil to grow in. There was no nourishment in these types of relationships, really. And the things that were showing up in my life, I would receive nourishment, just little tidbits of nourishment here and there. A lot up in the beginning, and then just a little drop here and there. Enough to keep me hoping that what was within me would burst forth. And everything I hoped and desired would start coming to life, and it didn't happen, and it didn't happen, and it didn't happen. And I eventually realized my outward environment was simply a reflection of things within me, of my belief system internally. And I started working on that. Not only did I change my external environment, but I started working on changing my internal environment, my belief systems. I started taking care of myself. What does this seed need? And I started giving myself those things, that this seed could start being nourished with what it needed. See, for so long, and I don't want to be disparaging or anything to the relationships I've been in, but for so long it was like the seed in the junk drawer. Sure, it was a seed. I had everything I needed to become what I was destined to become, who I was destined to be. And everything that I was experiencing and going through would somehow feed in and lead me to the proper place at the proper time. And just as the person takes the seed out of the junk drawer and says, I'm going to go plant this, I decided for myself, I'm going to go plant myself. I'm going to go nourish this seed, which I have neglected for so long because I was taught to neglect this seed. That's not a blame on anybody else. That's just the reality. And once I started taking care of this seed, nourishing it, providing it sunlight, providing it water, in all the metaphorical ways that we can think about, the seed started to break open. Break open or burst through. And it's a destructive process. Watch a seed in slow motion. Go to YouTube or something and look it up and watch a seed as the plant, whatever it is, begins to burst forth from that seed. It's a destructive, it appears to be a destructive process as that seed cracks and breaks open, and that plant, that flower, strives forth to come up. Life bursting through. It is creation in the appearance of that which is destructive. That's a good way to sum up my life. Creation, by going through and experiencing things that on the surface seemed highly destructive. What is it that's been calling you? What is it that you know that you have in the depths of your being when everything else is turned off, when everything else is quiet? You have that little flicker of that still small voice, or that intuition, or that knowing about who you are, about the direction you're supposed to go. What is it for you? And is the environment, both internally and externally for you, conducive to allowing you to blossom and to grow into everything that you were destined to be? I was in environments for so long where I wasn't getting nourished at all. And yet I look back on those and I say, well, sure, I can look at the other person and say I wasn't getting nourished from them. But at the same time, I have to look at myself and say, was I even nourishing myself? It's first and foremost, right, my responsibility. If I don't nourish myself, why would I expect another to nourish me? And in fact, if I can't receive nourishment from myself because I can't give it to myself, can I actually and fully receive the nourishment that somebody else would freely give me? We have everything that we need within us, just like the seed does, to become what we're destined to become. But the environment is critical, and you don't start changing things by altering the environment out there. You can do that. If it's a room that we're talking about and you need to make that room more appealing to you, sure, you can do that. The room is an object. But when it comes to relationships with people, you can't change them. You can only change what's in here. You can only begin to nourish aspects of you. And from that, the dynamic of whatever relationships you have with other people will automatically start to shift and start to change. Because of the fact that you are shifting and changing. What you would have used to allow previously, you'll come to a point where you won't allow that anymore. Where you won't tolerate that anymore, where you won't even entertain that anymore, where you won't even allow certain people into your circle because they contain characteristics or ways of being that are not conducive to the environment that is essential for you to grow into the fullest expression of who you are. And that is truly what we are here for. To grow into the fullest expression of who we are, to actually become that. It is all within us. It is the frequency of our soul. And within any frequency is information. And in that frequency of our soul, we have all the information that we need to blossom into everything that we are destined to become. But we must say, am I giving myself, am I in the right environment, both externally, and am I giving this environment internally, whether it's through food, whether it's through the way you think, whether it's through acknowledging your feelings, your thoughts, your emotions? Am I giving those things priority in life to create an environment within where I can grow and become that which I am destined to become? And I want to make a caveat here, because a lot of people, when they hear words like destined to become, they'll think of these grandeur things, these great leaders and these noble causes, and you're going to be out leading the world. That's a misnomer. Destined to become and live the frequency of your soul is more about self-actualization in the moment of now. And that can be through doing anything that is truly aligned with you. It's not about going out there necessarily and becoming some great leader, becoming some spiritual leader, or some motivational speaker, or some this or that, or whatever. Sure, you can do that if that's part of what you love, part of what inspires you, part of what lights your fire, part of what is your passion. But it's just as valuable if you're a person who stays at home and gardens all the time, who takes care of things in the house, who does certain crafts and creative endeavors, who works in their local community, who works behind the scenes, no one ever even knowing your true contribution maybe, but you know in your soul whether you were living the truth of who you are or not. I want you to look at that seed, that very tiny seed. We all came into this world with everything we needed. With everything that we needed. Some of us we found ourselves in environments based off experiences and other things where it wasn't conducive per se to growth, to blossoming into who we were destined to become. And yet once we get to that point in our life and we start nourishing that within ourselves, others will come in. They will see that, and they will help assist in that nurturing of self as well. These are likely people who already know what it means to nurture themselves, to take care of themselves, to provide themselves the environment that they need to become who they are destined to become. And by going within, everything in your life will change. You have a beauty within you that is unmatched, that is unique, that is characteristically you, and is the unique frequency of your soul. And only you can really, truly give and set and create the environment that is needed for you to fully blossom. And others will come alongside of us in that. And will exponentially help us along the way. Blossom into even more than we thought we could be. Blessings and love to each of you.